You're fired. We don't need people like you who are just high school grads and incompetent in this company. Get out now." Mr. Smith, the CEO, yelled at me in a loud voice. His face was as scary as a demon's, and it seemed like the other employees in the office were trembling too. Mr. Smith never liked me, probably because I joined a company midway through with just a high school education. Thinking that staying in the company would only bring more misery, I decided to leave after Mr. Smith's declaration of firing me. But right after that, Mr. Smith would repent his deed. My name is Joe, and I'm 28 years old. Ever since I was young, I hated studying. My grades were bad, and I was the kind of kid who caused trouble for my parents. But that didn't mean I was a delinquent. I always followed school rules and was proactive in helping out at home. Concerned about me, my parents enrolled me in tutoring classes early on, trying to boost my academic abilities, but my grades never improved. There were times I desperately tried to meet my parents' expectations by studying hard, but for someone who disliked studying like me, it was just painful. However, there was one thing I was proud of despite my dislike for studies. It was that I had skillful hands. Instead of being good at studying, I was confident that I wouldn't lose to anyone in tasks involving handiwork. I always won first place in arts and crafts contests. My parents, seeing this, would always say, "It would be nice if you could transfer some of that talent to your academics." That summer, as a senior in high school, I was faced with the ultimate decision: to go to college or to get a job. My parents, of course, wanted me to go to college, but I had other ideas. I thought it would be a waste of money for someone who hated studying like me to go to college. I figured it would be better to get a job that used my hands. So, I found a job in a factory assembling parts, which was advertised at my school, and I took it. When my parents heard my decision, they were furious, saying, "I can't believe you're not going to college." But as they saw me working hard, they gradually started to support me. The work at the factory was enjoyable, and it felt like the perfect job for me. Being skilled with my hands, I did the given tasks flawlessly and gained respect from my colleagues and supervisors. I even started to dream of working my way up the ladder. But about 10 years after I started, dark clouds loomed over me. "The factory is going to be closed," the factory manager suddenly announced. I couldn't believe it. The world seemed to go dark. The other workers around me were in a frenzy too. "This factory will be absorbed into a large printing company, MG Corporation." I was too shaken to speak. What was going to happen to me now? As I was filled with anxiety, the factory manager said something surprising. "You all will be working at MG Corporation in a new department. I'll let you know the details later." Me, working at MG Corporation. I was overwhelmed. MG Corporation was a renowned company in the printing industry. Would I be okay working there? Well, if it involved using my hands like before, I should be fine. I reassured myself and waited for my new assignment. After a few anxious days, the time came to hear about my new department from the factory manager. I took a deep breath. Then, the factory manager said, "Joe, you'll be joining the sales department at MD Corporation." I couldn't believe my ears. I had never done sales before in my life. "Wait, I'm in sales." The factory manager sighed deeply. "You worked hard in the factory, so I tried to find a similar job for you at MD Corporation, but the only vacancy available was in the sales department. I'm sorry, but could you give it a try?" The manager had worked hard to find me a position so that I wouldn't be unemployed. I decided not to be selfish and to accept the offer. "I don't know how much I can do, but I'll do my best." Hearing this, the factory manager smiled, relieved. "You're a hard-working employee, so I'm sure you'll do fine. Good luck." I nodded with a smile, but I was filled with anxiety inside. I hoped it was just me overthinking. With these thoughts, I faced my first day at work. I had prepared a suit for today. Having worked in a factory, I had never worn a suit before. I changed into the suit, feeling strange, and headed to the office where I would now be working. With me was Emily Anderson, who had worked in the same factory. Poor Emily. She had been in the factory for less than a year and was now a new employee moving from factory work to sales. She looked more nervous than I, trembling. "I can't believe I'm in sales now. Maybe I should have resigned like the others." When it was decided that the factory would be merged into MD Corporation, most of the employees had resigned. probably because they were confused about switching to a different field of work. I too had considered resigning, but thinking about the prospect of job hunting again, I figured it might be better to continue working here. It'll be okay. Let's work hard together again. When I said this, Emily smiled, but our smiles were only until that moment. As we entered the office, all the employees suddenly looked at us. A tough-looking man came out and looked us over. It was a rather unpleasant gaze. As we stood there bewildered, the man said something surprising. "You two are the clunkers from the factory, right? I am the head of the sales department, Taylor." Emily and I were lost for words. Clunkers. I was shocked to hear such a word from Taylor, the department head, whom I had just met. I had never even been called that by my parents. Emily looked like she was about to cry. I mustered up my courage and replied, "Nice to meet you. We're Joe Brown and Emily Anderson, starting work here today." As soon as Taylor saw my face, he started laughing. "You guys must be just high school grads, right? Can high school grads even handle a job like this? I wonder why the higher-ups let such clunkers into the sales department." Haha. Taylor's sarcastic remarks finally made Emily burst into tears. It must have been too much for her, just out of high school. Other employees around us looked at us with pity. Then, an older man entered through the sales department door. Seeing him, Taylor exclaimed in surprise, "CEO. That must be the company's CEO." I felt relieved that the CEO had arrived. He would surely reprimand Taylor for his remarks. I harbored this faint hope, but it soon crumbled. "What's going on?" I could hear voices all the way outside. The CEO, looking puzzled, spoke to Taylor. Grinning, Taylor said, "I just can't understand why these clunkers got into this department." The CEO grimaced. The condition for the merger was to take in these employees. I didn't like it, but it couldn't be helped. Such incompetent high school grads can't possibly do well in this department. They'll quit soon enough. Haha. Emily and I exchanged glances. We couldn't believe the CEO would say such things, treating his employees as incompetent. I completely lost confidence in working for this company. Well, try not to cause too much trouble for others. Emily and I were shown to our desks and started our work immediately. Filled with anxiety, I let out a deep sigh at my desk. Then, a colleague around my age sitting next to me spoke to me. "Are you okay? You must have been shocked by what Taylor and Mr. Smith said. In this company, their word is law. It's best not to go against them." David said this and then taught me how to use the computer. His kindness provided some relief. As I was taking notes on what David had taught me, I heard Taylor's loud voice from behind. "Hey, high school grad. What are you doing? Hurry up and get to sales." I was bewildered. I had never done sales and didn't know what to do when suddenly told to go. "I don't know how to do sales." Confused, I replied, and Taylor clicked his tongue loudly. "High school grads need everything explained from scratch." "Oh, fine. For today, you'll assist in David's sales. Learn how sales work from him. You've got to get the hang of it by today." What Taylor was saying was absurd. I hurriedly prepared for the field and decided to accompany David on his sales calls. Stepping outside the office, I took a deep breath. Finally, I could breathe some fresh air. Inside the office, the atmosphere was so tense that it felt suffocating. Seeing me like this, David chuckled. "This company is really a mess. With bosses like that, it's no wonder new employees quit soon. You seem to have grit, so I think you'll be fine. Plus, you'll get used to this atmosphere over time." Saying this, David bought me a warm cup of coffee before we started our sales. Encouraged by his words, I vowed to become a competent salesman. "Thank you. I'll work hard and someday show Taylor and the others." I said this, and David nodded vigorously. After accompanying David on several sales visits, I was amazed by his sales skills. His meticulously prepared documents and sales talk were incredible, and on our way back to the office, I couldn't help but express my admiration. "David, your sales were incredible." I was so impressed. Seeing me out of breath and excited, David burst into laughter. "Thank you. I'll work hard and someday show Taylor and the others." Inspired by David's words, I returned to the office full of motivation. But awaiting me was a harsh reality. As soon as I got back to my desk, Taylor approached me. Then, he said something astonishing. So, you've shadowed David, our department ace, which means you should be fully capable of handling sales from tomorrow. Your quota for this month is 3 contracts. Is this man serious? Just because I shadowed David's sales doesn't mean a newbie like me can suddenly do well. And his saying my quota is 3 contracts, but there are only 2 weeks left in the month. I couldn't comprehend what Taylor was saying. The other employees also seemed to think it was unbelievable. Adding to my confusion, Taylor continued, "If you don't secure 3 contracts, the CEO said you'll be fired." What? Fired? Stunned, I could only answer, "Understood." From that day, my desperate sales efforts began. I would come in early, compile client data, create documents, and whenever I had a chance, I'd learn sales techniques from David and other colleagues. I'd go out for sales multiple times a day and then stay late to work on paperwork. I was so busy I didn't even take lunch breaks. Then one day, Emily invited me to have lunch together. She looked worn out and desperate. Despite being pressed for time, I couldn't leave her alone, so I decided to have lunch with Emily. On the empty rooftop, we started eating our deli sandwiches. In the silent space, where not even the sound of birds could be heard, Emily quietly spoke up. "I might get fired from this job. It's impossible to secure 3 contracts within this month." Emily was under the same mandate as me. 3 contracts by the end of the month or termination. I looked at Emily's face. Tears were welling up in her exhausted eyes. I come from a single-parent family, and I have a young sister. If I don't work, my family will be in trouble. I've been working hard, but it seems my efforts are not enough. I hadn't known about Emily's situation. Like me, she was working hard from early morning to late at night to meet the quota. The unreasonable demands were coming from Taylor and Mr. Smith. "Emily, you've been working hard enough. There's still time left in the month. Let's keep pushing a little longer together." All I could do was offer those words of encouragement. Emily weakly nodded, and we returned to our desks to resume work. This routine continued for a while, and with just 2 days left until the deadline, I had managed to secure 2 contracts. "Joe, that's amazing. I'm sure you'll get the 3rd contract in no time." David encouraged me, but I had no confidence at all. While preparing for the last sales pitch, that was when Taylor suddenly started shouting in a panicked tone. "The employee scheduled for today's negotiation with a major client hasn't shown up. He must be planning to quit the company." Apparently, the employee responsible for the negotiation had unexpectedly skipped work. Taylor was both upset and furious. The other employees seemed too busy with their sales to step in. Then Taylor approached me. "Hey, incompetent Joe, you go and handle the negotiation." Me. I was stunned. I had no experience in negotiations. The other employees and David looked on in shock, but the frantic Taylor continued. "What choice do we have? Everyone else is too busy. If you're scared to go alone, take that clunker, Emily, with you." Understood. Unable to refuse a direct order from my boss, I decided to give up my own sales efforts and head to the negotiation with Emily. Taylor, without a word of thanks, practically threw the negotiation documents at me. "This negotiation is crucial. Don't mess it up." He glared at me. I was angry but had no choice as a rank-and-file employee. I quietly replied and started to gather my things. The negotiation was with a major client in the neighboring county. Emily, visibly confused, muttered to me, "Are we really going to be okay?" I was anxious, but there was no other choice but to go. David approached us with some advice. "The main details of the deal are already set, and you just need to listen to the client's requests, so don't be too nervous. I would go with you if I could, but I have another negotiation to attend." David looked apologetic. "It's all part of gaining experience, right? Don't worry, we'll be fine. We're heading out now." I said this and got into the company car with Emily. In the car, I asked Emily to read through the negotiation documents while I memorized the details. Emily was still visibly anxious, shaking in her seat. I tried to ease her tension with some conversation, but it only seemed to make her more nervous. Eventually, she became so ill that while I was driving, she asked me to stop. "Joe, I'm sorry, but could you pull over for a moment?" Fortunately, we still had some time before the negotiation, so I quickly pulled over at a nearby rest area. Emily hurried to the women's restroom. While I was concerned for her, I continued to review the documents before the negotiation. Suddenly, I noticed a red luxury car parked next to us. I thought to myself that I would probably never get to ride in such a car. Just then, a woman got out of the car with a troubled look on her face. As I watched, she began to inspect her car thoroughly. It seemed like her car had broken down. I instinctively got out of the car and approached her. "Is there something wrong with your car?" As I spoke, she frantically began to explain her situation. She was breathless and seemed in a hurry. I got a call that my father is in critical condition, and I jumped in the car, which I hadn't driven in a while, and suddenly it started making strange noises and stopped moving. In critical condition. That's terrible. I'll help you. I completely forgot about the negotiation and focused on fixing the woman's car. I needed to fix the car quickly, or she would regret it forever. Although I had no knowledge of cars, I used my one true skill, being good with my hands, and tried desperately to fix her car. She apologized and watched my actions. Just then, Emily returned to the car and approached me. "Joe, we need to go soon, or we'll be late for the negotiation." Emily was frantic, but honestly, helping with the car repair felt more important than attending the negotiation. The negotiation could happen any time, but today might be the woman's last chance to speak with her father. I really want to fix this car. But Emily was in a state of panic. The woman looked very apologetic. As we were doing this, the time for the negotiation came and went, and Emily's face turned pale. Finally, I managed to fix the car, and it started. Even without car knowledge, I was able to repair it. The woman thanked me profusely. "Thank you so much. Now I can go see my father. I can't thank you enough." Tears filled her eyes. Now she would be able to see her father for the last time. I felt a deep sense of relief, but the moment was brief. Emily and I quickly got into the car. We had to head to the negotiation as fast as possible. However, the woman came running to my car and asked hurriedly, "Please let me thank you later. Can I know your name?" There was no time to respond properly, so I quickly said, "My name is Joe. Don't worry about thanking me," and drove off. Sitting next to me, Emily started crying. "This is the end for us, isn't it?" I felt sorry for Emily, but I couldn't go against my conscience. We were significantly late, but we arrived at the client's office for the negotiation and rushed in. "I'm terribly sorry for being late. Is it still possible to have the negotiation?" The receptionist looked apologetic and said, "I'm sorry, but I've been informed that today's negotiation has been cancelled." My mind went blank. I knew from Taylor that this negotiation was crucial. I still tried to plead for a chance, but it was futile. Then, at that moment, my phone started ringing insistently. I had a bad feeling but answered the phone to hear Taylor's furious voice on the other end. You've really done it now. Because you didn't show up for the negotiation, the client's CEO is livid. Get back to the office immediately. I have a reason for that." I tried to explain the situation in a panic, but the call was abruptly cut off. I began to shake, wondering if I would now be unable to stay at the company. Emily and I got back in the car and headed to the office, but I was so disturbed that I hardly remembered the drive. Upon entering the office, Taylor and Mr. Smith, looking furious and waiting for us, confronted us. Trembling, Emily and I stood before them. "Why didn't you two go to the negotiation? What on earth were you two doing? You weren't playing around, were you?" Taylor berated us loudly. The employees in the office watched, holding their breath. I desperately explained why we were late. At a rest area on the way, we found a woman whose car had broken down. She said her father was in critical condition, so I helped repair her car, and we ended up being late. Mr. Smith clicked his tongue loudly after hearing my explanation. "You prioritize fixing some unknown woman's car over an important business negotiation. Unbelievable." But her father was in critical condition, and I felt compelled to help. My explanation was drowned out by Mr. Smith's loud voice. "You probably haven't even met the quota of 3 contracts, have you? With this negotiation issue as well, you don't need to come to this company anymore. What? You're fired. We don't need incompetent high school graduates like you in this company. Get out now." Emily and I were speechless. Mr. Smith had just fired us. Taylor sighed and said, "Now, hurry up and gather your things and get out." Tears streamed down Emily's face. Emily and I started to pack our things obediently. There was no staying in the company after being fired. David looked at us in disbelief. He seemed to want to say something but couldn't speak in front of Taylor and Mr. Smith. After packing, Emily and I were about to leave the office. I said to everyone, "Thank you for everything. I truly appreciate all your help." Everyone in the office was looking at us. Some covered their mouths in shock, unable to believe what was happening. It made sense, considering that the colleagues who had been working with them until this morning were now suddenly fired. The thought of the other employees, who had to work in fear of being fired next, pained me. Outside the office, I stopped and apologized to Emily, feeling dejected. "I'm really sorry, Emily. It's my fault you got fired too." Upon hearing my words, Emily shook her head vigorously, then unexpectedly responded, "Joe, you did nothing wrong. You only tried to help that woman out of kindness. A company that can't recognize such goodwill is already over. I think it's actually good that I'm leaving this company." Her kind words offered me some comfort. Despite the situation I had put her in, Emily was showing me kindness. As we were immersed in these thoughts, a voice called out to us from behind, "Hey, you two, come back to the office." We were both surprised by the sudden call. "Why are we called?" We followed Taylor back to the office, only to find Mr. Smith smiling at us, a complete turnaround from before. We stood frozen, utterly confused. Then Mr. Smith said something astonishing. "Joe, you did a great job. The woman you helped, Ms. Johnson, contacted me. She was able to spend her father's final moments with him, thanks to you. She wants to express her gratitude by doing business with us." Ms. Johnson is the CEO of a major publishing company. She desperately searched for you and found our company. She wants to sign a contract with us, but only if you are involved. So, Joe, you should stay in the company. It turned out that the woman I helped, driving the red luxury car, was the CEO of a major publishing company, a client MG Corporation had been eager to work with. The deal apparently hinged on my involvement, but that didn't change my situation. I have been fired. That's too convenient. I can't accept that. I responded somewhat angrily, but Mr. Smith started to coax me. "You may be a high school graduate, but I always saw something different in you. If you come back, I'll promote and raise your salary. It's a good offer, right?" What he said didn't make sense. After all the disdain he had shown me before, it was too late for such offers. I had already decided not to return to the company. Then Taylor added something convenient too. "If you want Emily to come back with you, the CEO agrees to that." While Emily might want to return, I definitely didn't want any more involvement with this company. What should I do? As I was pondering, Emily spoke up loudly. "I absolutely won't return to such a rotten company, so rest assured." I felt relieved that my worries were unnecessary. I share the same opinion. "Excuse us, then. A rotten company. Fine. We'll double your salary." Huh? This company really is hopeless. I absolutely won't return to this company. Stop trying to use me only when it's convenient for you. But Emily and I left the office, tossing the disappointed Mr. Smith and Taylor. As long as people like them were in charge, the company had no future. Leaving the company felt liberating. Emily seemed to feel the same, showing a serene expression. Whatever the future held, this decision wasn't wrong. Shortly after we left, a major incident occurred. Mr. Smith was arrested by the police. Apparently, he had been evading a huge amount of taxes without the employees' knowledge. An internal whistleblower exposed this, leading to his arrest. This caused MG Corporation to rapidly deteriorate financially. Taylor and other executives tried desperately to recover, but the company could never return to its former state and was eventually forced into bankruptcy. Mr. Smith's downfall was a result of his own doing. The thought of still being an MG Corporation was chilling. As for me, I started working at a new place. It was a publishing company, and I was again handling sales. I have become quite good at the sales job I once disliked, and now I enjoyed every day. All thanks to Ms. Johnson. After learning I had left MG Corporation, Ms. Johnson contacted me, wanting me to join her company. When I thanked Ms. Johnson, she laughed and said, "My father once taught me that people who sacrifice themselves to help others can be bad. Work hard and enjoy it." Thanks to Ms. Johnson, I rediscovered that working can be enjoyable. I'm incredibly grateful. How about we have lunch outside today? That sounds good. The weather is nice. Let's eat outside for a change. Furthermore, Ms. Johnson listened to my requests and even hired Emily and David. Thanks to this, I spent each day happily without getting bored. A little act of kindness back then drastically changed my life. It's as if kindness has the power to transform someone's life. From now on, I intend to live kindly towards others.